Alright guys, it's Chatterbox Reviews, coming at you guys with The Brave, Season 1, Episode 8, Review. Alright, so I thought Episode 6 was the best episode of this series so far, and I am wrong. This episode is the best episode. I can't say by far because episode 6 was pretty damn good. But it was the best episode of the series so far. I personally, there were, other episodes did have, some more positive things. The DIA especially didn't have that big of a role, as some other episodes as this one. But I thought this one was one of the best episodes of the series and really brought it out of, that sort of typical procedural drama type of show. And it really brought it out of that. So I thought that was just amazing that they were able to do that. I just thought that the cast was so good this episode. But yeah, anyways, a lot of positives and not barely any negatives for this episode. So yeah, really impressed with this one. So a few things before I get to the recap and then some overall thoughts with the rating, character, that type of stuff. A couple things I want to say. So I do apologize for this one being so late. It is Saturday and the episode was on Monday night. Yeah, so I really feel bad about that, but yeah, sorry about it being late. I've just been really busy lately, and also I didn't get around to watching this on Monday night, so I only watched it I think 2 days ago. So yeah, so I'm a little late with this one, so I do apologize for that. And second, thank you so much for 10,000 views on the channel. We have reached the 10,000 plateau on the channel, and I know a lot of people don't think too highly of total video views on a channel or whatever, but to me I think it really says a lot, especially for me having a channel with only 40 some subscribers, to have a 10,000 total views. That means a lot to me, so I just really like to thank you guys. Even if you're watching the videos, you're not subscribed, that's still awesome. Obviously a lot of those views are people who are not subscribed, of course. But yeah, really appreciate it. Really awesome, right? To see that. So we hit that, and I might do a video for it. I'm not sure. I might. But if I don't, yeah, just this is sort of the thank you video. I'll probably do it again for the Walking Dead video this week, just because that tends to get a few more views from regular channel subscribers or viewers. So I'll probably thank the the viewers again on there. But anyways, yeah, really appreciate that. I wanted to cover that for sure in this video. So this one, the recap may be a little bit longer for this episode compared to the last couple weeks. And then of course, like I said, get to my rating, favorite character, that type of stuff. Yeah, so anyways, let's get into this recap. So the mission this week is to find out basically how a Russian drone flew into United States airspace without being detected. So there was no detection at all of this drone. The only way they found out is because they ended up being able to track it after they learned that it crashed. So yeah, big problem, right? I mean, the United States, that doesn't happen too much where they don't detect an aircraft. So obviously they know that there's some type of new technology on this drone, and if they don't get it, then they're not going to be able to to detect this. And also, then if this works for the Russian drone, then what if it works for a Russian, missile, right? And they don't see the missile. So obviously a big issue there. So we later find out then that the drone crashes on the Mongolia and China border. And we actually see the young boy from from his village watch it go down at the very beginning of the episode. So that kind of sets up, the premise for the episode and the mission, as it usually does. Each week we usually have, an event that kind of triggers the rest of it. And that's what I liked about the episode 6, the Spain one, is we didn't really have that, right? We just had a coincidental, kind of bump in there with McGee and the girls. So I really like that there. And this is kind of going back to the the routine here where we see something and then that kind of triggers the rest of it. So yeah, basically Dalton and his team have to get there to the crash site before the Russians do and get a sample from the drone wreckage so that U.S. intelligence can use it to detect a missile or a drone or whatever they send next time. Right? So big deal here, a pretty high stakes mission, especially in the past it's just been saving someone, saving a person, but in this, you're basically kind of saving the whole nation. So yeah, really high stakes, and I've noticed that as well. As the episodes have kind of gone on here, the stakes have gotten higher and higher each time. So I really like that as well. They're kind of building on that for sure. Because the first episode was literally rescuing, a journalist or a woman, or I guess a nurse, right, a doctor. And now they're kind of rescuing the whole nation. So yeah, you see that kind of step up there. So yeah, then of course, they got to get the team in somehow, in a quick fashion, right? Because they're trying to beat the Russians. So they have Dalton and his team have to skydive out of the plane there to get down onto the ground. And yeah, I don't know. This was the only part of the episode that was a little shaky to me, to be honest. Probably one of the only negatives. It looked like a home video, to be honest, when I saw the footage, not a really TV show. And I was actually wondering to myself, I'm like, did they actually shoot this for the show, or did they find this online? I don't know. It just didn't look like a, regular quality TV show, but that was the only thing that was kind of bad about this episode. So then, of course, they land on the ground. We don't see this part, of course, but, then they walk on foot until they find the village that we saw the young boy at earlier. So then it kind of connects back. I knew that we would. I knew that we'd find the village again. And it actually turns out that they found out about the drone without the young boys intel, right? They didn't know that he existed in the village, so that's a little bit different than the past. Usually we see that incident and then they end up calling in, right? So this was a little bit different. But yeah, we find out then that the village has been attacked by the Russians. So we find out that Dalton and his team have lost the race already, and that the Russians are pretty much there, right? They're pretty much there at the crash site already when Dalton's team is just at this village now. And then, of course, the villagers are kind of scared. They don't know, all these soldiers just came in and shot them and maybe even killed some of their, friends and family. And yeah, then Dalton's team comes in wearing, camo and the same, with guns and stuff. So they're a little bit worried, of course, and then Dalton, goes to send Amir to talk to them. And this was a really funny part, in my opinion, where Dalton says, how's your Kuzak? I think it was Kuzak or Kulak. I'm not exactly sure, but I think it was Kuzak. How's your Kuzak? And then Amir says, same as it's always been, borderline non-existent. So Amir's kind of their translation guy. Usually he's able to to pick up a dialect and kind of converse with them, say just basic things, right, to get them out of the situation. And then Amir, he says we mean no harm, and then he says praise Allah, and it's like, no, that's totally wrong. Right? And he, of course, he realizes it, and I don't know, it's just kind of a funny moment there in the episode for sure. Praise Allah, when he's trying to, talk to these villagers, and so they're kind of freaking out, right? They don't understand what he's saying and all that. But luckily then McGee ends up stepping in and shows, the red cross on his backpack there. So he steps in and helps the boy with his gunshot wound, which, is a big help, of course. And that kind of, lets the villagers know that they're, here to help and not, to hurt them like the Russians. And so when he's fixing the wound, the boy tells him information about information and the location of the crash, whereabouts it went down, where he thinks, it touched down. So this, of course, helps the team out a lot. So the team actually then is given some horses by the villagers there, so that they can get there faster. And yeah, so they get on the horse, they ride to the location that they've been told. I just thought it was so badass, them on the horses throughout the whole episode, not just this scene. It's just so badass, they're just riding in on horses there. It didn't really match because, they're in their, big military uniforms and all that, so it was kind of funny. But yeah, it was really badass. I really like that part of this episode. And also another big thing is that they have to disable all the communication with the DIA, and any technology has to be turned off. And basically they all left it at the village too. Like, they did not take it at all. Because when they walk past the China border, Chinese have a lot of, security stuff, and they want to, be undetected when they enter into China. So, yeah, big thing there. So they're totally cut ties with the DIA, so they're basically alone. They got, no eyes and ears or anything like that. They're just on their own, and they're trying to, get a successful mission here. So Then we see a very intense scene when they reach the China border in what they call the kill box. So that, comes back again in the episode as well. And this was so intense. I mean, this was crazy, crazy intense for a TV show on TV. I was into it. Like, I really was invested into it, and I was worried for them. And then the Russian soldiers come in, right when they go into the field, and they all duck down into the grass. Just a crazy episode, a crazy scene. It was a crazy episode as well, but a crazy scene here in the episode, and this was great. So the Russian soldiers then come in. They step right beside them in the tall grass, right? So it's really hard to see them. And then they also have, bush on them as well to hide them a little bit. They are wearing camo as well, so maybe that helps as well. But yeah, they're stepping like right beside them, and then I think Jazz gets out her gun, and she's about to shoot him, but then he goes right past. So yeah, very intense scene there, and I was worried for them. That was a legitimate scene where I was actually worried. So yeah, that was great that they the TV show kind of gets that emotion out of you, especially at this point now that we're invested so much into these characters, right? So luckily they do not get caught, and they kind of trudge along there in the now that they're in China. So then we see back at the DIA, we see Patricia meeting with the Russian ambassador, and the worst news possible, or the bad news possible, is that the Russian ambassador knows about Dalton and his team being in China, and he's trying to tell Patricia that they shouldn't be there, and, he's going to send more Russians there to get them because they can't let, the Americans get this intelligence or whatever like that. So, big problem, obviously, Patricia is faced with, but she pretends she has no idea about it. She bluffs him, which he kind of sees through, right? He knows that, she knows, but, of course, she's not going to tell him the truth like that, of course. And I thought this was great as well. It showed, like a dinner scene in a restaurant. I thought that was great because, like, they're there in the China, Mongolia border in the fields and all that, trying to find this wreckage. And then we switched to like a fancy dinner restaurant scene with Patricia and the ambassador. I just thought it was really well done. The locations of the settings and all this, and definitely the transitions between them as well were great as well. So yeah. Then she comes up with a brilliant idea with, just absolutely, genius, Patricia. She calls her Chinese friend and meets with her while the ambassador's spy is still at the restaurant watching her. So yeah, really, really smart, right? And so of course the spy then calls the ambassador and says that she's talking to the Chinese. And of course, this is not what the Russians want. The Russians don't want the Chinese to know about it. So at this point, then that kind of forces the ambassador, to call off more men from going to the crash site and helping out and fighting against the Americans, because then the Chinese will know. So, yeah, totally bluffs the Russian ambassador here. And this was a big thing because Patricia really, helped out Dalton and his team, even though she's at a restaurant, with the Russian ambassador, way across the world. So, I thought that was really cool to see there as well. And yeah, really, really great idea there from Patricia, just seeing her brilliance as usual. So then Dalton decides that he's going to, so now they get to the crash site, right? They're looking down on it. They know that the Russians are down there. They're getting all the salvage and all that, So they're kind of losing out here. So Dalton kind of goes with a plan B. So he decides to jump onto the truck and try to get the sample, while the team will join him then and loop around at the rally point, they call it. So we don't know exactly where that is at the time, but we know that they're going to go there and meet with Dalton. So then we see them put a tree down across the road as a distraction, stopping the Russians at a certain place so that Dalton can get on the truck. And the Russians now know that they are close, though. That's what this does, right? So Russians didn't know, how close they were. They didn't know if they were there quite yet, but now they do. So that kind of was a sacrifice they had to make. But in exchange, Dalton is able to slip onto the back of the truck and kind of get there in the back with all the, parts and the broken pieces from this drone that went down that they have in the back of the truck. So then a very intense scene again when the Russian soldier stops the trucks and, goes into the back of the truck looking for him. And luckily for Dalton, he's able to hide underneath the wreckage there and go undetected. But again, a very intense scene there, very high stakes. I mean, he would have been killed right on the spot there. and just crazy, though, that he gets out alive. So then the trucks get moving again, and he's able to get a sample from the drone. Pretty small sample, by the way. I'm not sure if that, realistically would be enough for them to kind of get a, calculation of what's going on with the drone. But I don't know. I guess it was big enough. But yeah, he gets the sample for the agency, and then this was an important part that didn't come back until a little bit later on. But he actually gets his sat phone out and dials a number on it, and actually just leaves it in the back of the truck. So this was, a mystery. Who is he calling? Why is he just leaving it there? And of course, this connects back later in the episode in a really good way. I thought, it was a really great twist that I of course, didn't really get at the time, but it made a lot of sense later on. So I thought that was great as well. So he leaves it in the back of the truck as he jumps off, the back and into the forest. But unluckily for him, he's they've had a little bit of luck, so something's got to happen here. But the Russian soldier who suspected him before ends up looking in the rear mirror on his side, and he sees Dalton, getting off and tucking and rolling down the side of the road there and into the forest, and immediately, stops the trucks, and, tells everyone, that he's an American, and they basically all run after him, while shooting. So, a big thing here, that they catch him, and now basically all of them are after Dalton. So yeah, crazy stuff there. And this was probably one of, the favorite part of my favorite part of the episode, was this part. So the chaos, ensues. I mean, Dalton is just running for his life. The great chase scene here, by the way. We haven't really seen many, chase scenes like this so far, and it was just great. I mean, this episode just had every single part of a good, sort of military action, sort of drama, storyline. Honestly, like, it was great. I mean, they're riding in on horses. There's a chase scene. And then, like I'm going to say, there's hand-to-hand, combat coming up. There's, different settings. I mean, there's the intelligence agency back at back at home. And then, they run into civilians at the village, and, just a lot of stuff like that. I mean, this just included everything. I felt like at times I was watching a movie. Honestly, I felt like it was just, they packed everything into a 2-minute episode runtime, and it was just awesome. But anyways, back to the recap here. Great chase scene, of course, there with Dalton, and he's just, trying his hardest to dodge all these bullets that are kind of raining at him, right? So then finally the Russian commander, who stopped earlier, catches up to him, and he's a big guy. Like, he's a beast compared to Dalton. And again, Mike Vogel in real life, I mean, he's a big guy. He's jacked. But he's not that tall. Like, he's not actually, that big of a guy. And of course, they're not going to make him bigger in the show. So he is actually, I wouldn't call him small, because he's a big guy. He's jacked. But he's not a, huge, tall guy. So obviously this commander has that on him. He has a little bit of a upper hand there. But, don't try crossing Dalton, man. I mean, like, it's not going to end well. So, no, this was great hand-to-hand combat. Then this fight, it actually lasted for like a minute. I wasn't sure what was going to happen here, but I thought it was another great fight scene. Dalton had one of these, I think, a few episodes ago. Which one was this? Oh, the Seville one, episode 6. As well, he had a great hand-to-hand fight scene as well in that one. Thought this was great as well. So actually, we see that Dalton seems to actually lose this fight. He actually, this Russian guy, he really took it to him. I mean, he was really losing this fight, getting kneed and punched, and he was getting a beating for sure. But of course, it's Dalton. He still seems to get the better of him, even though he's losing this fight, and he ends up that he stabs the guy to death. And of course, he has, I think he says goodbye or something to the guy. Just a great line there as well. But I do really appreciate the way then later how he, kind of, he comes to terms with, saying, well, I just got my ass kicked, right? I like that, like he kind of admits to that. And he's, sorry, he's not just, kind of an arrogant, bastard or whatever, right? He definitely understands that he got his ass kicked in that one. But anyways, he gets better of him, stabs him to death, and goes on. And then, of course, he kind of stops for a few seconds, and then he hears the gunfire again, so he has to get up and start running. And then he gets to the kill box again. As as I said, it comes back later on, and this is the later on. I thought it was really cool as well that they used this same setting, right? They set it up at the beginning where they called it the kill box. They made a big dramatic scene out of it. And now at the end of the episode, he comes back there, and that, just, gets all of us viewers worried, about Dalton. And it seems like he's completely alone, right? It seems like he's trapped. He has to run out into this open field. And I mean, there's no way he can dodge all those bullets and not get shot once in this wide open field with all these Russians right behind him shooting. But of course, he's trapped. Seems like there's no way out until the team is there. They, stand up out of the grass and they gun down all the Russians at the edge of the forest there and are able to save Dalton. So this was a great scene here where the team comes up, and we actually had no idea. I mean, we knew that they were, going to this rally point, but we didn't know that the rally point actually was the kill box. So, yeah, crazy stuff there that, the team's able to rescue them. And I love the slow motion too, when they stood up out of the grass and, just, kept pulling the trigger, gunning down all these guys. And it was great. It was awesome. So yeah, great scene there. They saved Dalton, and then of course, we see Dalton, he's like, well, I might have a broken rib or 3, he took a little bit of a beating, but of course he shows them the material that he got. So obviously, that is a success, there in itself, that he got that. But of course he's, kind of admitting to getting his ass beat. So then, of course, after that, we see how the sat phone call at Dalton Place connects back. So we see that the sat phone actually leads the Chinese right to the Russians, right? Because we knew that when they used these sat phones or anything with the signal, right, the Chinese could detect it. So obviously the Chinese detect the sat phone call, and of course Dalton leaves it on the truck that has been driven by the Russians. So it leads the Chinese right to the Russians, and of course the Chinese are, it kind of engage them, they shoot the tires or whatever, and they make sure that the Russians, they can't move anywhere, and they kind of, I would say, yeah, arrest them, I would say, right at the side of the road there. And this, of course, creates a distraction, because then the Russians and the Chinese are both occupied with each other, and now they can't go after Dalton and his team. So they end up getting away safely from this. And, yeah, just another great plan from Dalton, as usual, where, we see this come back. Yeah, then I thought this was great. I mean, they're kind of, riding off into the distance on these horses. And, they're joking about old Western movies and all that. I didn't really get a lot of the quotes, to be honest, like a lot of the references to the movies, so I'm not a big, Western sort of, movie guy. But, yeah, I thought it was great. Some good comedy in there. They're riding back on the horses. Just a really, great group comedy scene, as usual in these episodes. At the end of the episode, they usually have a, kind of a group, coming together. I say this every week, I feel, but I just really, really appreciate the way they do it. And I thought this week was, nothing out of the ordinary. I thought it was great. And then the ending of the episode, very, very strong. I mean, just the last minute and a half here. So Noah and Hannah are, kind of going home for the day. Noah's kind of asking her out to dinner. So we'll see where that goes. I do kind of predict that they'll end up together by the end of this season. But I'm just not really sure. But obviously that would have been a leap to it. But ends up that's not the main part of it. Ends up Patricia stops them in the elevator when they're about to go down, and they find out Patricia then tells them that they find out new information from the bug on Rainier Booth, and he's from episode 3. So yeah, I just thought this was really good. So basically, they find out it has to do with the truck on the beach, and they find out who is responsible for driving that truck on the beach into into the kids and Dalton's team. So this is great. I mean, I love that that they're bringing back this storyline, not only from episode 3 with Booth, but they're also connecting the storyline back from episode, I think it was 1. Yeah, I think it was episode 1 where that truck came at the beach. And ever since then, I've been like, well, they spent about a minute addressing it. They never went after the guy who did it. They never did this. They never did that. And now they're coming back to it 7 episodes later. I just really, really love this. It's kind of, taking them out of typical procedural drama, because no procedurals would ever, come back to a storyline like this and bring it back, for an episode. And I just thought this is a great great way of doing that, especially, how we know Booth now after episode 3, and we know this thing that happened on the beach. Just great connecting the two and then putting this out. So really, really awesome job there. I really, really love that. And I felt like that was really one of the best positives of this episode. So it should be very interesting next week to see where that goes. Obviously, it's kind of setting up the mission for next week, which we haven't seen yet. We usually just get, intel on the mission that episode and then start it, right? We don't usually see episode, and then next week this is what they're going to be doing in this episode. So really great stuff there, really interesting, and it should be a good episode next week. Now I'm going to get to my rating, favorite character, and some overall thoughts of the episode. Alright, so in terms of a rating for this one, I've already said, it's the best one of the series so far. I really, really enjoyed it. I'm going to give it a 4.9 out of 5. Only reason it's not perfect, because it really almost was a perfect episode, was the skydiving scene of that whole beginning part where they say, the team has to go in quick, and then, it just looks like a home video of some, random, guy just skydiving, and he took it with his, GoPro or something like that, I don't know, it just kind of looked fake. And then the way they kind of land, and they're just, kind of randomly there, and they're walking all of a sudden. That was the only negative part of the whole episode, in my opinion. I thought there was, maybe some scenes where, the Russian guy stops the trucks. He only just looks in. He doesn't really investigate. But, I mean, that's just kind of, it's not that big of a stretch to imagine that. But definitely, maybe you could point out some things where it's like, well, is that really how it would happen? Maybe it might have been done a little bit differently. But anyways, I thought it was such a great episode. I've really covered most of my stuff already. I'm not going to go over, a huge list of things that made it positive. Just everything, really. Like I said, it felt like I was watching a movie at times here in this episode. Second half of this episode was so intense, so suspenseful, and you really just didn't know what was going to happen. And I thought this was a great spotlight for Dalton as well, and I thought he did an amazing job, but I'm going to get to him a little bit later. He did a great job. The whole cast did a good job. Only, again, thing I would say is we didn't see a lot of the team, together, actually. The four of them, and outside of Dalton, we didn't actually see them for, I think a good 5 minutes in this episode, which, I mean, is expected the way the whole plan was, arranged, and the whole thing with Dalton going on the truck alone. You could say that was a negative, but I still appreciated, that they had that whole plan and the way it worked out. So, yeah, really, really great episode. This show is honestly impressing me so much, and if this doesn't get a season 2, I'm actually going to be really upset. I mean, I've seen some stuff on Twitter about how, they're trying to get, audience members to vote on it, to push it to get a season 2, to get renewed. And man, I really hope it does. I think it really deserves it, and yeah, it's kind of underrated, I think, at this point, honestly. I mean, they have been staying at about 5 million live viewers per week. So, I mean, that's pretty decent. I mean, for a procedural drama like this, they didn't have a lot of ads, they didn't have a lot of, marketing, I wouldn't say, for this, and I think that's pretty good. So, I think definitely they need a season 2. This show is just, amazing, every week. It's just really surprising me, so I really, really want to see a season 2 for it, for sure. And next week's episode should be really great. So, favorite character for this one, of course, is Adam Dalton, played by Mike Vogel. Can't say enough about Mike Vogel. I've actually been on Twitter, and I was, I think I said this last week, but there's this radio show hosted, and the creator of the series was actually on there. And I actually tweeted in a question about Mike Vogel and how it was to work with him and the creator, and I think Natasha Karam, who plays Jazz, was also there, and they both said, how good Mike Vogel is as a person, let alone an actor, right? And he's just such a great guy, and I really think he's doing such a great job with this series. It's really, his own, right? And I know him from Under the Dome. That's where I know him from, and I was just so impressed with him in that. He's doing such a good job in this series as well. Really just doing a great job with his character. I think this was really a role that he was meant for. I really think that they designed this for him, and he does, an amazing job. So really a standalone here in this episode as well, just the stuff he did and the stuff he was able to accomplish, and he basically, made this a successful mission himself, right? Being able to do it. So really great stuff there. Great leader. Great, heroic stuff in this episode. I just can't say enough about that. So, in terms of, what's left for this season, I actually don't know. I still haven't been able to find out Right now, there's 10 episodes listed on IMDb. That's usually a source where I go to find out how many episodes are left in a season that I don't know yet. And there is only 2 episodes left, so it looks like there will be 10 episodes this season. But then when I look on some other sources, there seems to be like 11 listed or 12 listed. So I'm really not sure. I maybe should actually tweet at one of the actors or the creator. They may actually answer and see how many episodes are in this season. Because if there's only 10, we only got 2 weeks left of this show. So, I don't know. But if there's more, which I hope there is, maybe there might be 13. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure, guys. But if I do find it, I'll definitely tell, I'm going to try to find out from now until, next week's review for sure. So, anyways, guys, that just about does it for this video. Again, really apologize for it being late. I'm going to try to be more on time with these reviews coming in the next, the next few weeks. But, yeah, anyways, guys. So, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for the, support recently on the channel. 10,000 video views. Can't believe it. Really like to thank you guys. And, yeah. Amazing stuff. So, anyways, guys, amazing episode of The Brave this week. Can't wait for next week, and I will see you then for The Brave Season 1, Episode 9.
I've been through the desert on a horse with no name. It felt good to be out of the rain. In the desert,